So, let's talk about something huge, a question that really gets to the heart of how we all live together. What is actually fair? It's a question that can feel super personal, kind of emotional, but a philosopher named John Rawls gave us this amazing way to think about it systematically. So let's dive right in and unpack his big idea.
Okay, let me start by asking you this. Just imagine for a second that you get to design the perfect society from scratch. The only catch? You have no idea who you're going to be in it. You could be born rich, poor, healthy, sick, anyone. How would that change the rules you'd create? Just hold that thought for a minute.
And this is the guy we're talking about, John Rawls. This quote, wow, it just gets right to the point. For him, a society that isn't just is as fundamentally broken as a scientific theory that isn't true. Justice isn't just some nice bonus. No, it's the absolute bedrock of everything.
All right, so let's dig into this core problem. What makes fairness so tricky to agree on? As we're about to see, it's this built-in conflict that, honestly, we all deal with every single day. Here's the basic dilemma, right? We all say we want a fair world. But when it comes time to define what's fair, it's so hard not to be biased by our own situation, our job, our bank account, our background. What feels fair to me might feel totally unfair to you, and the other way around. Rawls saw this clash, and he asked a brilliant question. How do we get past that? How do we come up with principles of justice that aren't just rigged in our own favor?
Well, this is where Rawls introduces his most famous idea. It's a thought experiment he called the veil of ignorance, and it's a really powerful tool for forcing us to think impartially. Rawls asks us to imagine this starting line, what he calls the original position. So picture a room full of people. They're all about to design the basic rules for their new society, the social contract, the whole shebang. They're all smart, rational people, and they all want to do what's best for themselves. But there's a huge twist.
And here's the twist, this veil of ignorance. As you step behind it, boom, you forget everything about who you are. Your class, your race, your gender, your natural talents, even what you want to achieve in life, it's all gone. You're a complete blank slate. And from that position of total uncertainty, you have to agree on the rules. You have to design a just society knowing full well you could end up anywhere in it, at the very top or the very bottom.
So this veil, it hides everything that could possibly bias your decision. You don't know if you'll be brilliant or struggle to learn, if you'll be born into wealth or poverty, if you'll be part of the majority or a minority. So you can't stack the deck for yourself, right? Because you have no idea what hand you're going to be dealt. So what kind of rules would you choose then? You'd probably want to make sure the game is fair for everybody, especially for the folks who might get the worst hand.
So what Rawls argued is that from this totally neutral position, any rational person would agree on two specific principles to run their society. And these two principles, they're the heart of his whole theory, which he called justice as fairness.
Okay, let's break these down. First, you've got the principle of equal liberty. This one's a no-brainer. Everybody gets the same basic rights. Freedom of speech, right to vote, all that good stuff. You'd want that because you wouldn't risk being born into a group that gets its rights taken away. But the second principle, this is where it gets really interesting. It says, look, some inequality is probably going to exist, but it's only okay if, and only if, it meets two very strict conditions. First, the best jobs have to be open to everyone, fair shot for all. And second, and this is the big one, any inequalities have to be set up so they provide the biggest possible benefit to the people who have the least. He called this the difference principle.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty abstract, right? How does this actually work in the real world? Well, let's put it to the test with something we all love to talk about, taxes.
Yeah, let's zoom in on this difference principle for a second, because it's a pretty radical idea. It's not saying everyone should have the same stuff. What it is saying is that the success of the most successful people is only justified if it actively helps lift up the people at the very bottom. Think about it this way. A CEO's giant salary is only just if the system that allows for that salary also provides the best possible life and safety net for the lowest paid person in that same company. The entire economy should be judged on how it treats its most vulnerable people.
So you can see how this leads to something like a progressive tax system. The basic idea is that those who have more, who've benefited more from the system, contribute a larger percentage of their income. And that money can then be used for things that benefit everyone, but especially the least well-off. Great public schools, affordable healthcare, a strong social safety net. And from Rawls's point of view, this isn't about punishing success. Not at all. It's about making sure the whole system works to everyone's advantage, especially those starting from the bottom.
But here's the thing. Rawls doesn't just hand us the perfect tax rate on a silver platter. He gives us a framework for having the conversation. And this question right here is where the real work starts. How much is too much? At what point does taxation stop helping and start hurting the very economic growth that can lift people up? Rawls's theory forces us to argue about this, not from a place of what's good for me, but from what would be fair no matter who I turned out to be.
And you know, the incredible thing about this veil of ignorance idea is that it's not just about money and taxes. You can apply this lens to almost any big social issue we're facing.
Just think about it. If you were behind that veil, would you really agree to a system where a kid's entire future is basically decided by the zip code they're born in? Of course not. You'd demand great schools for everyone. Would you sign off on a society where your gender could limit your career choices or your safety? No way. You'd want a society where that stuff just doesn't matter. You see, for Rawls, justice is about designing the structures of society to be fair from the very beginning.
And this all kind of leads us to the big challenge Rawls leaves us with. And it's not just a challenge for politicians or governments, it's a challenge for every single one of us.
You know, this is a really important point. A society can have laws and everyone can follow them, but it can still be profoundly unjust. Rawls pushes us to go deeper. He asks us to look at the very DNA of our society and ask, does this system give every single person a genuine, fair shot at building a good life, no matter who they are or where they came from?
And I think that's the key thing to take away from all of this. For Rawls, justice isn't charity. It's not about being nice and giving handouts. It's about building a system, a set of rules, where fairness is literally baked into the foundation. It's about creating the conditions where freedom isn't just a nice word we say, but a real, lived experience for every single person in society.